Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Chris Murray Report on WURD Radio, 96.1 FM, 900 AM. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as always, we got a lot to kind of get into today. We're talking about whether it's the 76ers at the All-Star break or maybe some Eagles today, and definitely some Phillies because baseball has started this week now, and in this show, we will always talk baseball here. And but the most important thing for this week is that on Monday, March 8th, and Jordan, I'm gonna see if you can guess this, is an anniversary, is an anniversary pertaining to Philadelphia sports history as well as sports history and sports and social justice history in the United States as well. And can you guess, Jordan, can you guess what that is?
Oh, man, I'm trying to think of it right now.
Okay.
Dang.
So.
Hey, I'm going to get back to you real quick.
Okay, you'll get back to me. Okay.
Yeah.
And not only is it 50 years that this event happened, but this is 50 years to the day, to the exact day, 1971. March 8th. Come on. I know y'all know this. I know y'all sitting back home. Y'all know this date. You know, involving a certain guy who owned a gym in North Philadelphia. Okay. So if you haven't guessed it by now, I will let you know. Monday is the
It's about Joe Frazier.
Joe Frazier, absolutely. Yeah, not the statue, but who did Joe Frazier fight?
Oh, man.
Come on, man. Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee.
Dang, who was it?
Oh, come on. Muhammad Ali. Ali Frazier. I'm going to tell you something. Jordan, I got to kind of, basically kind of tell you. That was probably one of the biggest, most hyped fights in the history of boxing. And the hype surrounding that fight went beyond just the guys in the boxing ring. That fight was a mirror of the division of American society, because this was at the highlight of the Vietnam War. I think earlier that summer, Nixon had sent troops into, it might have been, a year ago, a year before that, Nixon had sent troops into Cambodia and Laos or someplace, and people protested. You had Kent State in 1974, 4 people were killed on the camp, 4 kids, college kids, were killed on the campus of Kent State protesting the war. You had also racial divisions that still existed in the country. And that boxing match, between Joe Frazier and Ali kind of took on the mantle of all the divisiveness that existed in American society back in the late 60s, early 70s. And that was one of the great, and the thing about it, the fight actually happened. The hype was just a prelude to one of the greatest fights in the history of boxing. It was one of the great wars in the history of the sport. And from that standpoint, both fighters emerged probably greater than, they became legends. Ali and Frazier. Ali taunted Frazier. And today, I'm going to have Joe San Laquito and I are going to talk about our own personal memories of that fight. Because I remember, I was a kid. I was 8 years old. And growing up in Baltimore, and my mother had just taught me about the significance of Muhammad Ali. And I want everybody today, when Joe comes on, even during this first half hour when I'm kind of freestyling a little bit, I want everybody throughout this show to call me and tell me what your memories of that fight, because that fight was all over Philadelphia. First, you had Joe Frazier. And Joe Frazier, to me, was really between Ali and, for me, Joe Frazier was one of the great boxers of all time. Great. I think anybody should make that Rocky statue. Matter of fact, the character Rocky was supposedly based on Joe Frazier, on Smoking Joe. And Joe Frazier, guy who came up from South Carolina and, came up hard. And he was mischaracterized, in my opinion, because one of the things that the divisiveness of the fight, Muhammad Ali, given what he had gone through with the Vietnam War and not going to the Army, refusing to be drafted, Muhammad Ali became a folk hero to the anti-war movement and to the Black Power movement as well. And from that standpoint, Ali exposed the racism that existed in America. In other words, Ali said, look, y'all want me to go 3,000 miles away to fight for freedom with the Vietnamese. I can't even get my freedom here. And Ali, of course, made the famous, you my opposer when I want freedom. You my opposer when I want justice. I can't, you sending me all these millions of miles away to fight, and I can't get justice here in the United States. Okay? And so Ali had become that symbol of us, standing up for our rights. Even the mere act of him changing his name from Cassius Clay to Muhammad Ali was a revolutionary act for that time, and even to this day, because a lot of people, a lot of us are not Muslim, and he chose it was an act of pure self-determination. Okay, and that's also one of the principles we celebrate Kwanzaa every year: self-determination, self-definition, and it was kind of, and Ali had, in many respects, in Black America, was one of the most beloved people in Black America. And so then on the other hand, you had Joe Frazier, guy who came up from the cotton fields of South Carolina, worked really hard, guy who was, to me, is just, who came up through an authentic African-American experience. And I'm going to tell you why that's significant in a moment. But here's a guy who worked hard, blue collar, like I said, he wasn't political, didn't seek any fanfare, but he just wanted to be the best in the ring, in that boxing ring. And when Ali was stripped of the title, Frazier eventually became, champion, won it in the ring. And so, of course, those two had to fight. And there's some ironies. There are some dramatic ironies about those times. There's some dramatic ironies. Like, for example, when they signed the fight, of course, Ali painted Frazier to be a quote-unquote Uncle Tom, which to me was further from the truth. But because of the anger of that time, because of the volatility of those times, it was either you're this or that. Frazier was painted by Ali as the quote-unquote white man's champion, this Tom. Even Bryant Gumbel wrote a piece about called Joe Frazier a black champion. A black champion with in a white man's a white man's champion, a black body, or something. I'm paraphrasing that. So that's one thing. And so from that standpoint, and I'm gonna hear from my callers and listen. By the way, to call in 215-634-8065, 1-866-361-0900 if you want to call in, share your memories and reflections about the fight throughout the show. And like I said, and I'm also going to be talking to Jack McCaffrey today about Sixers and Phillies, so we're going to be, engaged in that other stuff too. But for the remainder of the show, I still want to, for most of this show, I want to talk about your memories of that situation. But Ali, in retrospect, now we looked at it at the time, the volatility of the 60s and 70s, there's a lot of anger, a lot of, and I think it kind of permeated, because I think a lot of people love Joe Frazier, but they also loved Ali. And those of you who were there, because this was all, the hype, Jordan, the hype for this fight, Ali came to, after they signed the fight, Ali came to Philly and was was calling Joe Frazier out. And supposedly they were going to, there was a big rumor that they were going to meet out at Fairmount Park. That's how crazy the hype was. They were. I mean, people closed down stores in and all throughout Philadelphia, expecting these guys were going to fight. Let's go to the phones. Maurice from North Philadelphia. Maurice, how are you?
Hey, how's everything? Good morning. I had a question that I want to comment on the Muhammad Ali thing. My first question is, are you familiar with the University of Texas football and the black student athletes? What's going on out in Texas?
I've not run into that yet. I mean, I've not run into that. I'm sure what's happening in that situation.
Well, the school wants them to stand up at the end of the football games and they sing the song "The Eyes of Texas."
Oh, I did hear something about that. Go on, but explain it. But go on.
Right.
I'm sorry.
The song was offensive. It was discriminatory against the black people back in slavery and during the Reconstruction. So the football players and black student athletes refused to sing it. So they was told yesterday that if they don't sing it, they would never get a job in the state of Texas. And people have to understand how strong Texas business sector is. They can blackball you. But my thing is, let's move to the HBCU schools, and then we can let them know how we feel doing that. Now, going back to Muhammad Ali, it was a spectrum where Joe Frazier, we can say he's Uncle Tom, if you know what Uncle Tom means, Josiah Henson. Uncle Tom is not what the narrative is, what they guys believe through Harriet Stowe book. Uncle Tom was a freedom fighter for black people, but the book turned around to be something else. But it was Joe Frazier that put Muhammad Ali back on the map.
Absolutely. That's true.
It was Joe Frazier that gave him an opportunity to fight for the title, and Joe Frazier was also, when Muhammad Ali was being blackballed, it was Joe Frazier that was giving Muhammad Ali envelopes and money to put in his pocket.
That's right. Gave him some love.
He understood the plight. So, but it was all a gimmick. It was to sell the fight. Muhammad Ali, he was wrong for calling the man an ape for different things, but he did come back and apologize, and he showed his humanity. But at the end of the day, him and Joe Frazier got together and made that fight go because Ali was being blackballed.
Yeah. And the thing is, that's why I say, and you're right. Thanks for pointing out the fact that that the term Uncle Tom has been totally mischaracterized. I mean, Uncle Tom in Harriet Beecher Stowe's book was a hero. He helped lead people to freedom in the story, and he gave his life for it. And so, in the story, it's only a story. But the thing is that Frazier did a lot of things to help out Ali. That when I was 8, 9, 10, when I was about 8 years old when the fight happened, I never knew of stuff like that. Because, I grew up, around the circle, Black Power. My mother was a community activist. And, Ali stood for the brothers and sisters in the community. And, the thing about it, when Ali characterized them as that, if I had known that, I probably would have maybe, said, hey, Ali, I love you, brother, but you can't say that about your brother and whatnot. I mean, they were competitors. And so it was that kind of divisiveness, but they also were symbols of the anti-war movement. Ali basically, and although Frazier wasn't, but he was made that way. I mean, Frazier didn't care either way. Frazier was just concerned about, I'm gonna get Ali in the ring and I'm gonna whip his butt and all that, and that's fine. I'm glad. And the thing is, but Ali said so many things that were cruel that it got to a point it affected Frazier's kids. And if you remember the documentary that came out on HBO that talked about that talked about, people saying his dad's a Tom and all this other stuff. I mean, it's messed up that his children had to put up with that from people. But that was, a symbol of how crazy. I mean, this was an era in which soldiers came home from Vietnam and people called them baby killers. Well, there were poor kids who were trying to fight for their country, and they couldn't afford to run to Canada and all these other things. They went and these were mostly Black and Latino kids, poor white kids too. I mean, it's a situation where people were so polarized that we did not see our base level of humanity and all that. We didn't see that, and that will always bother me. But then again, that's youth. Everybody. This is why I find it funny from Jordan's generation. I see people who are woke, and they're all self-righteous about being woke. And it's really a part. I mean, you're all at that age. You're self-righteous because you believe in the moral, and you are pure in that you believe in morality. You don't see the nuance and the other things that are going on. But let's get back to the phone. Thank you, Maurice, for the call. Richard from North Philadelphia.
How you doing, Chris? Good morning.
I'm
Chris.
doing okay,
Jordan.
man.
Yeah, that fight. I remember that fight. I was 11 years old, and I had a Sports Illustrated, a magazine, about that, too. And when I heard that the fight was about to come, like you set the stage, all the stuff that was going on in the country about the Vietnam War, about the 60s and everything else, building up, until that, that fight. I think it was the second fight since he just got back into, coming out of prison, and I think it was. But anyway, that fight, I think, was set the stage, one of the greatest sports events, ever. There are a lot of social stuff, about that, too, that, like you mentioned, that went on, at the time, too, I think. And so I think that Ali may went a little bit far in characterizing Frazier, even though we know he would have tried. Ali was a good showman. He tried to sell his fight, and like that. Maybe, maybe he could have been a little more tactful, maybe, and like that, make it so much, and like that, but as you see, when the fight went on, of course, Frazier got the best of him, I guess, I broke his jaw. So maybe that might have done something, I guess, maybe to Ali. Do you think that after that fight was over, that maybe that might have did something with Ali?
Well, I'm gonna tell you something. With Ali, it was the accumulation. It was all three Frazier fights and just fighting everybody else. Because Ali, the good part about Ali as a boxer in the ring is that he took a lot of punches. The bad part about Ali in the ring was he took a lot of punches. And so from that standpoint, what I saw in that fight, though, was and Joe Frazier took a lot of punches too. Yeah. Those three fights. The second fight was a little less brutal, although Ali almost got to Frazier in the second fight. But both of those fights, it's a wonder that that those guys really didn't. I mean, Ali had his issues physically, but those are some vicious fights. I mean, Frazier spent about 10 months in the hospital, and Ali, had his big. I mean, he didn't get. I mean, Ken Norton broke his jaw, but he had this big swollen jaw. I mean, his jaw was bigger than it. Almost looked like a beard coming off his face. I mean, that was a vicious fight. Ali and Frazier hit each other with bombs that would have knocked out any other ordinary man, which made that fight so great because it was like, bam, it was like just two guys. It was a fight of the century. And that was the one fight, and of all the fights in the 20th century that I saw, that truly lived up to that fight. I can go back there, Pryor Arguello, Leonard Hearns, and some others, but that fight lived up to the hype, and given the volatility, because a lot of us, I ain't gonna lie, when Ali lost that fight, I felt bad because I was like 8 years old and I was against the war. Yes, I was against the war. I was with I was Black Power. Say it loud. I'm black and I'm proud. And I felt that that maybe it start we're not wrong. We weren't, and history proves that we were not wrong about the causes we stood up for. But it felt like that. I mean, a lot of people. Brian Gumbel said he cried after that fight because, a lot of people who were it felt like a slap in the face for everything that we stood for. But in a real sense, it was a sport. But when you look at it, it was a sporting event. Joe Frazier fought one heck of a fight. I still say that's one of the greatest left hooks I've ever seen. And when Brandon Graham stripped the ball from Tom Brady, I said that was the second greatest left hand in Philadelphia sports history. The first from Joe Frazier. And that's when he put Ali on the canvas in a close fight in that 15th round. Ali, to his credit, got up but Frazier and took a one. There was another part of that round where Frazier hit him with a vicious shot. It was like, man, how did he stay up? How did Ali survive that round? You know, that's, and then Frazier, how did Frazier survive? Because Ali was like pop shotting him left jab, and it was just like, how did these guys stand up? Because like I say, first time, like I say, you know, the first time I saw Frazier in the ring, and I'm fighting him. I'm like, okay, I'm on the canvas. Even before he hit me, I know, man, because I ain't gonna stay there for it. I'll just take my knives, take my money, and go home. But I'm just saying that from that standpoint, you know, that's the fight itself was. I mean, the hype became anticlimactic compared to the fight. The fight itself, people stood in the garden, would not go home. Did not go home. So, you know, so that's what it was. Don't get now. I gotta go to break there because you got me talking about boxing, and you got me talking about my memories of great sporting events, and I can go on all day. So, so from that standpoint, first of all, Richard, thank you for the call, but we got to go to break, ladies and gentlemen, and y'all want to talk? Okay, you want to talk boxing for the rest of the show? We're gonna bring in Joe on at noon. I'm going to talk to Jack McCaffrey about the Phillies and Sixers at the bottom of the hour. So you're listening to 96.1 FM, 900 AM WURD. The Chris Murray Report will be right back.
I went to check on Pop today. We put our hands up to the glass as if we were touching. But really, the only touching part was that we both tried to smile.
That's no way to say hello or goodbye. COVID-19 vaccines are here, but until enough of us are vaccinated, we'll all still need to help slow spread. Keep a 6-foot distance, wear a mask, and avoid indoor social gatherings. Learn more about vaccines and slowing the spread at cdc.gov/coronavirus. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
James Schuler Memorial Boxing Gym presents Around the Way Rumbling, an amateur boxing event Saturday, March 6th. The first bout is at 2 p.m. at James Schuler Memorial Gym, located at 750 North Brooklyn Street, off of 42nd and Lancaster Avenue. Boxing saves lives, and this is the perfect time to join the gym. Monthly memberships and boxing lessons are available for ages 7 through 70. For sponsorship information, call Crystal at 717-421-0512.
Tune in this Saturday from 5 to 6 p.m. for the Islam Today show, with a perspective on moral guidance and Islamic principles and values.
Want the latest in Word swag? Check out the shop tab on WordRadio.com. Hoodies, tees, and more in a variety of colors. The shop tab on WordRadio.com. Show the world that you're all about black. Talk media. You're listening to Word Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. Independent black media.
Okay, we are back. Got a few minutes for some calls until about 11:30. But that fight, okay. Oh, we have Spread Love. Spread Love is back. Okay, well put Spread Love back on the phone. Spread Love, how you doing, brother?
God bless, brother Chris. How are you, sir?
I'm doing okay, man. I'm hanging in there, man. I'm just sitting here doing my weekly radio thing. How are you?
We'll give y'all the glory, you know. And thank you for your show and your work. I pray the family as well. As always, God bless Brother Jordan on the boards, always doing an amazing job. And y'all know me. I love all of y'all, the WRD family, all the listeners and the callers. I got to send special love to Brother Maurice from North Philly. I'm so happy to hear him on the air. More love, my brother. You know our hearts are with you as always. And I pray Germantown Joe as well. I ain't heard him in a couple of days. So just want to give a shout-out because, you know, we're very concerned about the well-being of our loved ones. You know what I mean? And,
yeah, absolutely.
Everyone in suffration and working to make it better. Y'all know my sentiment on that, so I'll keep it brief for time's sake. I wanted to volunteer something real quick, Brother Chris, and I don't mean no insult. But it's sort of disheartening for me, the fact that we be so thrilled to see our strong black champions damn near kill each other. What's your take on that?
Well, I understand that, and I mean, I see boxing as a sport. I mean, I understand the significance of that, And when you talk about Ali and Frazier, I mean, when I look at it from the standpoint as a sport, I don't. I look at it as two guys in the ring. They're competing with each other. On a larger level, you could say that seeing black men beat each other up in that way, it is on that level. One level is disheartening. I can admit that, and I can admit that in the sense that, especially for that fight, to seeing how how Ali kind of tore down Frazier, and to seeing this whole divisiveness in the community, and to seeing the divisiveness in the community about that is disheartening. And when you think about that, given the fact that we talk about Black Lives Matter, but rarely sometimes do we talk about things that us killing each other, because I think I have a friend of mine who lost a son in that way, and and I don't think that he's ever received the kind of comfort that some of the people who lost their lives by police violence, and a lot of people. So I don't like the violence in our community. I don't like how we, in many respects, glorify how we can tear each other down. I see boxing as boxing, right? I can separate the sport, but then again, you have to think about it in context to what's going on in the world too. And you hate to. There's a part of you. I mean, that's the love-hate relationship I have with boxing, because it's a brutal sport. It's two guys, regardless, and in many respects, regardless of race, as white. You see white guys, you see Latino guys beating each other up too. I mean, it's a brutal, hard sport, and yet I'm not gonna lie. I have a morbid fascination with it. I love the sport. I do. I mean, it does bother me, but it's one of those things. I see it as a sport, but at a larger level, given what's happening in our communities, Spread Live. I understand your point of view of it, and I'm not. And the thing is, and I'm not going to denigrate it anything, because there are things that are happening in the society. Why are we shooting each other over silliness, over nonsense, drug territory, or whatever that's all about? Individual beefs, I don't know. Why people in Chicago and Philadelphia? Why? And we have to solve that problem, because I think there's a mental health crisis in our community that we may not want to admit to ourselves. So that's my take on it. That's my take.
Brother Chris, I'll put it like this real quick. I would ask, and this is no insult to nobody's sentiment, and not denigrate nobody or nothing, but God bless us to reach and see the day where we are no longer adversarial and fighting each other, but banded together to conquer those who see our destruction as sport. More love.
More love. Like I say again, thank you very much. Peace and love to you as well. Okay, changing gears a little bit. We are at the All-Star break in the NBA. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Your Philadelphia 76ers are the best team. Are the best team in the Eastern Conference, albeit by half a game over, I think, the real best team in the Eastern Conference, and that's if the New Jersey Nets ever have Durant, Harden, and Kyrie Irving on the floor at the same time, they will be dangerous to beat. And my question as we bring in Jack McCaffrey is, what can the Sixers do to counteract it? Jack, you wrote a column this week saying that they ought to go after Kyle Lowry. Boy, I almost forgot that. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, he would be perfect. He's probably going to move at the trade deadline. He says he wants to remain with Toronto. Obviously, he's going to say that. But they're going to want to get rid of his contract at this point. It's about the time when the superstars, and he's one, start to gravitate towards the more likely championship contenders. Daryl Morey and Doc Rivers weren't brought here to rebuild. They were built here to win yesterday. Like, let's go. So there will be a deal to be made there for Lowry, Philadelphia guy. legendary competitor, just one of the great competitors in the sport, and a true point guard that who can score and can shoot. So you add, if they would do that, add him to that mix with Embiid, Harris, Simmons, and Seth Curry. Now you've got a team that can compete with anybody. So as long as they do something at the trade deadline of that level, they're right there with the Nets. And as the way Embiid is playing, better than the Nets. So it's there's some burden there. They've got to make a move. They're not going to go all the way with the way they're constructed. But if they can get Lowry for what's been reported, Thibault and Maxey, Scott and Green, and maybe a draft pick or something thrown in there, you're a much better team, and it's an opportunity for the Sixers to really win a championship if they make that move.
Yeah. What's the weakness of this team right now? I mean, they have a great record, and B's averaging 30 points a game and playing probably the best basketball that I've ever seen him play. If there's a weakness on this team, you would say is what?
I would like to see them get another big body for the immediate rotation. If not the starting lineup, then the second unit. Their backup unit functions very well together, and Dwight Howard has been a real eye opener the way he's anchored that second unit. But really, Matisse Thybulle, who I'm a big fan of, is a game-changing defender. To me, one of the best, if not the best, defensive player I've ever seen the Sixers have. But he can't shoot. Maxey has got all the talent in the world, but he is 20 years old and wouldn't be ready, in my opinion, to compete 4 rounds into a postseason in the NBA and have you compete at this time. So you would want them to get maybe another big for the backup unit. Absolutely, we already addressed that they need a point guard who can score on the top unit, and maybe another veteran on the second unit that's a little bit more dependable than Maxey, Thybulle, or even Korkmaz. So nothing that can't be done. These are all things that will be done. There's going to be veterans available at trade deadline. There's going to be big guys available at the trade deadline. There's going to be risks to take at the trade deadline. You might have to give up something to get something, but nothing that they can't. Yeah, a little bit more veteran savvy on the second unit, a little bit more bulk on the second unit, and another point guard for the first unit. That would be my answer. What I would look for if I was Daryl Morey, Elton Brand, and Doc Rivers.
Now, who would you give up? Because I like Thybulle. I think Thybulle, to me, you can never have enough defense. I mean, I've seen guys. I saw David Wingate have a career as a career journeyman because he could play defense. So, who do you give up in that mix?
You have to give. If you're talking about getting Kyle Lowry, a Hall of Fame level player who's not done yet, a 7-time All-Star champion, and the perfect player for what you need, then you have to get off of Thybulle. And I like Thybulle. I mean, when I look at the great defensive players the Sixers have had, you go to Bobby Jones, and then you go to Thybulle. Now, I know you mentioned Wingate. Yeah, he was also a guy, but Thybulle is he's one of the rare players who can change a game with his defense. It's now going into the second year. Everybody thinks that they can score on him. He gets you from behind. He makes a tip. He blocks a shot. He changes things when you get in. So that's my opinion on Thybulle. But when you have a chance, when you get in that championship series, if I were to have Kyle Lowry and you were to have Matisse Thybulle, I'll take my chances. And then when you're talking about a franchise that hasn't won a championship since 1983, it's time. They've been through the process, the rebuilding, blah, blah, blah. You got a chance to add the way you win a championship, as you know, at that level, is you gather multiple great players. And Embiid, in my opinion, is the best player in the game right now. Tobias Harris should have been an all-star. Ben Simmons is an all-star. And Kyle Lowry is a Hall of Fame player. Now, you put that starting lineup out there, maybe even get a veteran guy that we don't know yet to fill that out, or even use Seth Curry, then you've got a chance to go all the way. So, yeah, you bite the bullet and you give up Maxey and Thibault if you have to, and Green and Scott and draft picks if you can get Kyle Lowry. In my opinion.
I'm with that. I mean, I see your point on that because you have to win now, and you got to get guys that can win now. Would you give up a Shake Milton? Would a Shake Milton for that as well? Would you throw in Shake, or you keep Shake?
I'd be a little more reluctant, but you'd have to listen. Sure, he's really played well. He's not. He is an NBA player. He can score, he can defend, he can play the point. He's got the great reputation as being a scorer and a shooter. But what a point guard revelation he's turned out to be on that second unit. Brett Brown kind of sniffed that out at the end of last year when he put him in the starting lineup. Didn't perform well at the end. I think there was some some minor injuries situations with him, and of course they had that 2-month hiatus where everything was kind of thrown into disarray. But Shake Milton's been tremendous, and he and Howard really anchored that second unit. That second unit has been very, very helpful to the Sixers.
Okay. Now I gotta ask. Okay, the Sixers are where they are. We all agree that Doc Rivers' coaching has made a difference at this point of the season. So, when you look at this team and you look at this team the way it's configured and everything, I don't know. I mean, like I said, what has been one thing that has jumped out to you that's really made a difference? We talk, other than, is there a player who, outside of Embiid maybe, who has really stepped up his game? And then I want to ask about Ben Simmons and the whole. Remember how we all railed about him developing a jump shot? But is there anyone that's kind of stood out, for this team outside of the superstars?
It has been a superb player for a number of years. He's taken another step this year. Nothing dramatic. Not going to put him on the cover of Sports Illustrated, but he really good. The Doc has mixed him into the go-to rotation at the end of a game, and he can finish at the end of a game. Doc's got him playing at the right position now, kind of at the 4 spot. You
talking about Tobias Harris?
Yeah, Tobias Harris. Big shot maker, clutch shot maker. Should have been an all-star, in my opinion. They blew it. The voters blew it. But to answer your question, that's a guy that he hasn't taken a dramatic step because he was always good. He's taken enough of a subtle step that he's made a big difference. And the way you phrase the question is outside of Embiid. Well, I just double back on that. Embiid has taken it from where he was to he has made a dramatic leap. He was always an all-star. He's an MVP now. And he put up 40 and 19 against the Defensive Player of the Year the other night, including a step-back 3 to force overtime. And it's funny to say, you barely noticed it. I'm exaggerating. Of course you noticed. But you know what I mean? He did it with relative calm. It's like, oh, yeah, of course he put up 40 on Rudy Gobert. What did you think was going to happen? I mean, when's the last, maybe Iverson was that kind of scorer where you could pencil in, oh, yeah, well, of course Allen had 40. But it's to the point now where if Embiid's not scoring 35 points against great players, you scratch your – he had – I don't have the box scores in front of me. He had a game last week. I think he had 21 or something. And everybody said, that wasn't Joel's standard. He's 21. And so he goes for 40 the next game. He's taken it to the next level and carried the Sixers with him. So now you add in the next step that Tobias Harris has taken and the way Doc has coached, and you've got a much better team than you had before.
Before I go to break, one more question about the Sixers. I've not heard the groundswell for Ben Simmons to learn how to take a jump shot. And I don't know if winning covers all those things, but what are your thoughts on that? Should we still be after him to take a quote-unquote, learn to take the jump? So it's like Doc is kind of leaving him alone, so to speak. He's playing well, actually.
Yeah, he's playing very well. It's a great question, and it's a legitimate question. Winning does camouflage a ton. That's obviously if you're winning, then the press, myself included, yourself included, we're not badgering. Why are you not winning? Because you're winning.
Right.
Two. I don't care what the topic is in the world. Even at some point, it ceases to become productive to keep badgering it. In other words, it's not going to change. The guy's not going to take a jump shot in the flow from 3-point. So, and Doc Rivers realizes that. We realize that. The whole world realizes that. We could continue to badger him about it. At some point, it becomes a waste of oxygen. It's not going to happen. And to Doc's credit, he said, "Okay, this is not going to happen. Let's try to win with what we've got." The solution to that, and we'll circle back on this whole conversation, the solution to that is you bring in a point guard who can shoot, who would be, or certainly shoot and score. Kyle Lowry, for instance. Then you utilize Simmons more around the basket and as a creator, open floor, a good defensive rebounder, finds open teammates. He'll find Kyle Lowry open for 3-pointers. So it's not an unfair question. It's a legitimate question, and it'll absolutely be a legitimate question if they get to a second round of a playoff series and the defensive team backs off of Simmons, walls him off, and he can't score for an entire series, and you lose. Then we'll revisit it. To just pester the Sixers about it at this point, it's probably I call it an uneasy peace. It's just like, okay, this is what it is, and certainly winning definitely helps, and they have been winning, and he's been helpful to them winning games.
Okay. Well, all right. Thank you. Okay, Jack. Well, I'm gonna keep you on because I want to ask some Phillies questions, especially about their bullpen first week of spring training. So we're going to go to break. So you're listening to 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURD, the Chris Murray Report. Will be right back.
Okay, Her's new fire potato chips and cheese curls, they are spicy. Whew, they're hottest snacks yet. Hold on. Whew. But it's not just heat. There's some nice sweet and savory stuff going on too. Ooh, there's that heat again. It burns, but it burns so tasty. Ooh, that's hot. Find Her's Fire Snacks at your store today. Whew. Taste the flavor, feel the heat, break out the Her's.
I'm Anthony McLaurin. Been denied insurance? Call 888-307-0505. Life insurance, age 0 to 85, no examination needed. Homeowners insurance, any home, any condition, same-day coverage, 888-307-0505. Auto insurance, we can have you covered in 15 minutes. Business insurance, call 24 hours a day, 888-307-0505. I'm Anthony McLaurin. When you need insurance, I can help.
This Women's History Month, WURD Radio is proud to celebrate Black women innovators and trailblazers who have helped us all level up.
The trailblazing Black woman, Oprah Winfrey, is an American talk show host, television producer, actress, author, and philanthropist. She is best known for her talk show, The Oprah Winfrey Show, which was the highest-rated television program of its kind in history and ran in national syndication for 25 years. Credited with creating a more intimate, confessional form of media communication, Winfrey popularized and revolutionized the tabloid talk show genre. Dubbed the queen of all media, she is North America's first Black multi-billionaire, and she has been ranked the greatest Black philanthropist in American history. In 2008, she formed her own network, OWN, the Oprah Winfrey Network, which is an American multinational basic cable channel jointly owned by Discovery Inc. and her Harpo Studios. She's also an Academy Award-nominated actress as Sophia in The Color Purple.
This Women's History Month vignette was brought to you by AARP Pennsylvania and PICO, powering communities.
WURD recognizes Black women innovators and entrepreneurs who are making history every day. Nominate a Black woman-owned business for our Level Up contest. Go to WURDradio.com for more information. Sponsored by AARP, PICO, Bank of America, New Voices for Reproductive Justice, Comcast, Thomas Jefferson University Hospital, Keystone First, and the Museum of American Revolution.
You're listening to WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD, independent Black media.
Okay, we're back. The one place where I wish I was at this time of the year is Florida spring training. The Philadelphia Phillies have started spring training games in earnest. The biggest story that seems to be coming out of Clearwater is the fact that the Phillies have improved their bullpen velocity-wise exponentially. And one guy in particular, Jose Alvarado, is throwing the ball at 99 miles an hour. And this is for a bullpen last year that had a 7.08 ERA and blew 14 saves. Should we buy into the hype right now, Jack, that the bullpen has actually improved itself?
Oh, you have to. It's definitely improved himself, not to be fresh, but it couldn't have gotten worse. And you talk about velocity, they needed velocity out of that bullpen. You had guys last year like Brandon Workman who literally looked like they were throwing slow pitch softballs up there. That's absurd. So we've talked before, you put your trust in Dombrowski to identify good pitchers. You're always going to go out and accumulate. Halliday, Lee, Hamels, Oswalt when they did it. But you can go out and use your wits about you and find a good pitching staff, and that's what he's been able to do. And yeah, I would buy into the fact that they've improved the bullpen, and that will be major. You blow 14 leads in 60 games last year. That was historically harmful. You can't win like that. And now you've got Girardi, who's got a great reputation for being able to handle a bullpen. Now he's got a full bullpen to handle. It's a huge plus.
Yeah, and the thing is, because last year, when you think about the games, you talk about 14 blown saves. That's the playoffs. There's your postseason, and so that really does make a difference. But what about the starting rotation? How do you see? You talked about this week that we like to see Nola perform well in September, and if you keep Zach Wheeler for an entire year, which Zach Wheeler's a good pitcher, but he goes to those spells where he gets hurt. So how much where is the starting rotation right now? How good can this starting rotation be?
I'd say acceptable, and I'll just leave it at that. It's not legendary. It's not bad. If everything clicks, it could be very good. I mean, Aaron Nolan 2 years ago was an all-star and was, if I'm not mistaken, runner-up for Cy Young or second or third. He's got that kind of ability. Where it was really, to me, eye-opening last year, because we always knew that we've had enough evidence that Nola was not good in quote-unquote September. And that was always written off to, okay, it's a long season and he's had some injury problems and he's youngish. He's not young anymore, but he's fairly early in his career. He's had bad Septembers. When you had a bad September in a 60-game season, then you start to say to yourself, maybe it's not the workload. Maybe it's the pressure of September itself. And that's what would be scary about Nola. So he's on a wait-and-see basis with me. And I've always been – I supported him all along. He reminded – his pitching rotation, his pitching motions remind me of Jim Bunning in the Hall of Fame. He's got great motion on the ball. He's got pretty good presence on the mound, good competitor. But he's got to perform in September. You've got Wheeler, who's had a history of injury. He's tremendous. could have been an All-Star last year. Could have been a Cy Young contender. But then he had the fingernail issue. There's always something. Then you have Eflin, who's apparently really dazzling people in Clearwater right now. Probably the best, most talented pitcher in the rotation. Always injured. I'm not wishing the guy ill, but always injured. You added the left-hander and Moore, and then you fill in with the fifth spot. I'd say average to acceptable to, if you want to have some fun, a touch over mediocre. Like, okay, like enough with an improved bullpen and a good manager and a good offense that you can get you in the playoff hunt.
Yeah, I was going to say, does it, because I remember going historically, I remember those Cincinnati Reds teams. I can name everybody off that offense. I can even name maybe Jack Billingham. But their pitching staff, for all the greatness, was, I would say, average, and they had enough of a bullpen to kind of get them through. Is it necessary to have a staff like, say, in Cleveland and some other places around the league, that you have to have a dominating staff? Can you get away with an average to, say, very good staff and good offense and win? Can you get away with that?
Definitely, and the Phillies rotation can be very good.
Right.
It's got the potential to be very good. And so yeah, they had the greatest legendary pitching rotation in their history in 2009. They got the World Series, they didn't win it. But let's not confuse this with a bad rotation. We've seen bad rotations in Philadelphia. We've seen years where you couldn't come up with an opening day starter if you tried. This team's got 2 or 3 that would not be out of place with an opening day starter. So it's good. It's useful, and it can be a winning starting rotation. It just adds some injury questions and some durability questions. If they can get through that, it's fine. Yeah, you can win with that starting rotation, in my opinion.
Right. On the offensive side, we know these guys can hit. How much is Andrew McCutchen being back? Because, they said his knee is okay. It took I guess he took enough time to get that knee. And how crucial will it be for that offense, for him to play, to be back in this whole season? And how is that going to help this offense? Because I think I think he might be the guy that gets things going. And then, of course, you got so many guys. Bryce Harper. That lineup is insane.
Well, McCutchen will be your leadoff hitter when he's right. He's far. Let's face it. He's far removed from his MVP days. It's not the same player, but he certainly works hard at his game. And like you said, you write off last year as really a different kind of a season where he had some, was still recovering from that knee injury, et cetera, et cetera. So now he's back to 100%. You saw 2 years ago when he was 100% before he got injured. He was tremendous, clutch, the whole thing. So I think you circled right onto it, Chris. That's an X factor there. If Andrew McCutchen plays at, let me put it this way, if he plays at an all-star candidacy level, he's one of those guys where you're talking about him as a potential all-star, 3 weeks before the All-Star game, even if he doesn't make it, if he's hitting 280 and with a little power and stealing bases, he's a good defensive player. You know what? I think you're onto something. That could be the real X factor. So, but if he's not. I wish I had it in front of me. How old is he now? He's got to be. Is he in his upper 30s? He's at least in his mid 30s.
I think he's in his mid 30s. He might be mid 30s.
Mid 30s. If he's on a career decline, then it's a big decline. So you're right. There's your X factor right there. Because everything else is you could you don't know what to expect out of Baum or Hoskins either. So Baum, Hoskins, McCutchen, they all have Baum should have been Rookie of the Year. I voted for him for Rookie of the Year. McCutchen's been an MVP. Hoskins, when he's right, and he was right at the end of last year, he was smashing that ball out of the park. You got a lot. It's going to be a fun season. If everything goes right, they can be tremendous. they've got some things that might not go right.
Right. Yeah, I was gonna say.
I think they'll be in the playoffs.
Right. Well, I was gonna say if they can get Hoskins early, get him hot early in the season because he has a slow start. I think they'll do something too. I definitely agree. Well, Jack, we gotta go. We gotta, man. It's always, like I said, always appreciate your knowledge and wisdom and all these things. One last thing though, you covered boxing for a while. Monday is the anniversary of Ali Frazier. Do you have any memories of that fight? Anything that you remember from that fight?
You know, it's I'm old, but I'm not. You know, I obviously remember it, but it certainly was before my time covering the sport. All I can tell you is that later on in his life, I met Joe Frazier, and what a gentleman, and what a pleasure it was to meet him. He was a Philadelphia guy, and everybody. One thing I remember at that time. And again, I was young. You know, it was, very young. But people in Philadelphia were very proud of Joe Frazier, and rightfully so.
Right. Thank you very much, Jack.
That's what I remember of it. I mean, I don't remember seeing the fight live or anything like that. But listen, we're all boxing historians. We know that. I'm not going to insult your intelligence. That was a huge defining moment in the heavyweight division. But what I remember from it was how people in Philadelphia were happy for Joe Frazier because everybody knew him, and they kind of rooted for him, and was generally like a decent, good man.
Right. Yeah, that's true. You're absolutely right. Jack, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, Jack McCaffrey, the Delaware County Times, and like I said, you can read his column. Great columnist. Guy knows his Philly sports, definitely. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be right back. Listen to 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURD, the Chris Murray Report. Will be right back.
Clark Roofing Company has over 30 years of quality roofing experience, providing exceptional customer service, honesty, and professionalism. Clark Roofing is a second-generation master roofer, installing top-quality roofing systems for commercial and residential properties across the tri-state area. For fast, dependable service, call 215-365-ROOF. That's 215-365-7663.
Need to replace your Social Security card? In most states, you can request one online with a My Social Security account. A My Social Security account gives you secure access to your personal earnings history and benefit status. You can also get a proof of income letter, estimate and apply for benefits, and more. Save time. Go online. Open a My Social Security account at ssa.gov/myaccount. Social Security. Securing today and tomorrow.
Produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
Family Therapy Vignette Moments with Dr. Lucille Ijoy. Come on out and become a WURD Radio member one by one. Renew your membership or get a new one. Get serious information and have some fun. Call 215-425-7875. That's 215-425-7875. Come on out and become a WURD Radio member one by one. Renew your membership or get a new one. Get serious information and have some fun.
This is not a fad for us. We will not resume our regular programming when things die down. We're not black to help our bottom line or because it's politically correct. We're not joining a fight. This has been our fight, our message, our people. Black lives have always mattered here. We are undeniably, indefatigably, unapologetically, permanently Black Talk Media. WURD. The WURD Radio Newsletter, keeping you informed, engaged, and connected. Sign up by visiting WURDradio.com. Scroll to the bottom of the page and type your email address under Connect with Us. You'll receive the latest information on WURD Radio. Messages from our president and CEO, Sarah Lomax Reese. Exclusive articles and multimedia content and resources. Stay informed with the WURD Radio newsletter. This is WURD Radio.
96.1 FM.
And 900 AM WURD Philadelphia.
Black Talk Media.
You're listening to WURD Radio. 96.1 FM. And 900 AM WURD. Independent Black Media.
Okay, we are back. On the line, our guest, Joe Santoliquito. We're going to talk a little boxing history. And we're just going to talk some boxing. I mean, because I know a lot. I mean, because I'm going to say this. In this city, this is the boxing mecca, okay? I used to go to the Blue Horizon as a reporter here. It's a shame it got, there's no longer a fighting venue. But, boxing, this is every time, one of the best pleasures I've had as a sports writer and even as a fan was just, just sitting and watching boxing with some of my friends here in Philly. There was a bar I used to go to with a coworker of mine from the Tribune named Will. We would go and watch boxing matches. But it was bar North. I'm not gonna say which bar, but it was bar North Philly, and we would go there. They had the best baked wings of all time and whatnot. But we would go watch fights, and I love boxing. I mean, even though yes, it pits poor people against each other and all that, and and that's the contradiction that we have when we watch boxing. We love the sport, but given the political nature of our society, it's hard to watch poor people basically beat the crap out of each other to make other people rich, and so that's a thing that we try to work out with our consciences and all. It's perfectly human. And, I guess that's who we are as humans, that on the one hand, you abhor this kind of violence, but on the other hand, when you see boxing and you see boxing as a sport, it's that's why we call it the sweet science. In any event, Joe, let's get into Ali Frazier. I was aware as a kid of the political nature of it because my mom and other people, the elders in my community told me the significance of Ali and everything. And I liked Ali because he did talk, because he was, he talked a lot of trash. But that fight had, number one, it was two greatest fighters of that era, but there was a lot of politics, the noise around that. You're a Philly guy. You're a Joe Frazier guy. What memories do you have of that fight as a kid? I know you were probably, that's right. You don't have to. You were young, but when you look at the fight historically and you saw what those two guys in the ring, what are your thoughts about? And we all know Joe Frazier and whatnot, what a good man he was. What are your thoughts about that fight?
I'm amazed they both lived through it. I mean, the thrill of Manoa was far more closer to, and they spoke about it. That was far more closer to death for both of them, because I think they were fighting in like over 100-degree heat. And I remember Ali saying, that was probably the closest thing to death he ever came to. But here, I'm going to read you some interesting numbers from Ali Frazier 1, and you're going to tell me who you think the numbers belong to. Total punches, 378 landed out of 631 for a 59.9%. That's one fighter. 378 out of 631. And the other one is 330 out of 893 for 37%. So
I would say
whose numbers do you think was the first one? Whose numbers do you think was the second one?
I would say Ali's number was the first one because Ali threw a lot of punches, and I think the second one was Joe. I think Joe Frazier threw the biggest power punches of that fight in the 11th round and the 15th.
Well, here's the facts. The first one was Frazier.
Wow.
The second one was Ali.
Wow.
Here's another thing. Ali had a far more balanced attack, 135 in jabs, jab connects, and 195 in total power punches. The obvious difference in the fight and how he still turns around. I mean, first off, Joe landed 6 out of almost, let's call it 6 out of every 10 punches, 378 out of 6
Right.
round one. And then total power punches, which is amazing, and you never see it today. You'll never see it again. 365 out of 578 for a 63.1% connect rate on Ali. It's incredible. I mean, he only landed 13 jabs out of 53. He but Joe, the whole night, just loaded up, obviously, with that brutal left hook of his, and loaded up
Right.
to the right. And it's just a night of just loading up. I mean, there was some where, I mean, he would hit, for example, the second round of the fight, he had landed nothing but power punches. He was 16-32 in terms of power punches.
Wow.
And you even look at here later in the fight, his highest output, which was, I believe, this is kind of outrageous, 13th round, 45 out of 55. Lands a total of 46 out of 58 punches in that round, 45 of which were power shots, 45 and 55, in comparison to Ali in the 13th, which I believe Ali was in quite a bit of trouble in that round. But again, the 13th round, 30 out of 40 power punches connected, 55 out of 66 punches thrown. You don't see that today, and you'll never see that again.
No.
In terms of athletic heavyweights, Frazier's made in the mold of Marciano, Dempsey. There were other Joe Fraziers, we could say. Ali, only one of them. A big man like that who's 6'3", 6'4", can move like that, can move his feet like that, can move his hands like that. No one ever saw before. And
you don't see that much today from heavyweight.
If they came up in this day and age, I mean, Muhammad Ali he'd be wide receiver for the Minnesota. He'd be Randy Moss. 6'3", 6'4", 210, 215. I believe he was 215, 216 for that fight. I think Joe came in at 202. But the other thing that was amazing is obviously Ali's ability, Ali's chin, which was incredible, Ali's will, which was incredible. But then you look at the other side of Joe Frazier, smallish man, 5'10". They listed him, I think it's 5'11 and a half, but Joe was close to 5'10". Very thick guy, but also a guy that he never fought in the state. He only fought in the state of California once because Joe had a bad eye, and Joe was also a diabetic. I mean, so this is an amazing man that overcame incredible obstacles to turn around and beat, or at least hand, the greatest heavyweight ever in the history of boxing, his first defeat.
Right. You brought up a lot of interesting things because when you said something about if these guys came up in this era, they would be in the NFL. I had a conversation with Bert Sugar. We're talking about why we don't have a good amateur program anymore, or as good as it used to be. And one of the things he said that Bert told me was he would have loved to have seen a Ray Lewis as a boxer, because in this era, I think I wouldn't say kids are spoiled, but there are more options for a lot of poor Latino and African American kids. There's more sports options in that regard, especially those who were born in this country. But I do think that those guys, Frazier overcoming those obstacles to fight. And of course that I caught up to him in Manila, but the thing is, I just thought that when those two guys, and I mean the height, we knew all the political noise behind the fight, but for a fight like that to live up to the height, very rare. You and I can pick out, if we had to put together a top 10 or a top 5, we're hard pressed. I mean, we had to think about it. I mean, I can think off the top of my head, fights that lived up to the height. Leonard Duran won. Leonard Hearns won. Pryor Arguello. And I can think of a number of fights that really...
Hagler Hearns.
Yeah, and Hagler Hearns, always, don't forget that. Hagler Hearns for 3 rounds. Was like, that's the greatest 3 rounds in the history of boxing. So we can think of those things, but in the heavyweight division, not so much. I'm not saying there weren't good fights. Don't get it twisted. But at that level of and the thing about it, it reverberated. The more I watch, because I'm like you, I'm a boxing geek. I watch basically. I watch it on YouTube. I watch it. As a matter of fact, ESPN is showing something. I think tomorrow night. I got it tonight.
Tomorrow afternoon at 2:00.
Right, 2:00. Okay.
Yes.
They're re-showing the fight, and the more I watch that fight, it's a wonder that even in the first fight, Ali, even in that fight at Madison Square Garden, it's a wonder that someone didn't get really knocked out, because Frazier hit Ali with some bombs. Ali was just like, man, I mean, the accumulation of punches that Ali had on Frazier, it's a wonder that both walked out of there. It's a wonder that in the 15th that Ali got up. You hit me, you or I with a left jab like that. Those are because we're both out of shape, obviously. But you hit us. We're in the hospital.
Be dead. If Frazier hit us, like Frazier hit Ali, that 15th round, I think we'd both be dead.
We probably would be. We'd be dead. How did those guys? That's the question. How did those guys stand up? It was insane that these guys just. It was insane that they stood up to all that beating. It just was.
Jerry Eisenberg, the great Hall of Fame sports columnist for the Newark Star-Ledger, had a great line. They weren't fighting for the heavyweight championship of the world. They were fighting for the heavyweight championship of each other. And I think that's what stirred that great rivalry. Now, the second fight was awful in comparison to the first fight. And the third fight, and I still believe to this day the third fight was the best out of the three of them.
Yeah.
The third fight, again, you're talking about two men that were as close to death as they could be. And by that time, that third fight in Manila, Frazier was just thrown in as a gimme. Ali thought that was going to be a gimme. And it turned, Joe's, his character, his heart, wouldn't let him give up, and especially not give up to someone like Muhammad Ali. I mean, that venom, that deep-seated, and I'm going to go here, that deep-seated hatred kept Joe going. And they were both close to quitting themselves. And then Eddie, the great Eddie Futch, said, I'll never forget the line that Eddie Futch, son, this is it. He said to Frazier, I don't think anybody's ever going to forget what you did this night. And we're still talking about Ali Frazier 50 years ago. And when the 50th anniversary comes for the Thriller Manila, I got a feeling there's going to be as much of an outpouring as you'll see Monday with everything I've done. Obviously because of our relationship, I've done over 50 interviews these last three days alone, between national, local, a lot of stuff with my affiliation with Ring, and then obviously as the president of Boxing Writers Association of America. People, it's interesting too. A lot of the people good number of the people that I speak to, they can't even spell fight, but they want to talk about the 50th anniversary of that fight and the overtones of that fight, the political ramifications and the social ramifications of that fight, which today could be an interesting parallel to what we just witnessed with the we could easily say the previous president and the backlash against that and some of the political upheaval that had gone on in this nation. And there's a lot of there's quite a bit of similarities. Obviously, the big thing with this is that this is not taking place in the backdrop of the Vietnam War. I mean, that was something very real, something very serious. Where people were dying on both sides, both the American side and the Vietnamese side. So there's a lot of serious things that were happening then. We still have Afghanistan. We still have Afghanistan going on, but nowhere near people dying in the hundreds and the thousands each day.
Right. Well, see, here's the thing about that. I mean, it basically, where the fight went beyond, the sport, was the divisions of America, because Ali's stance on the Vietnam War and not going to war. And, a lot of that side, those of us, and I would say from a historic standpoint, even though I was very young, from a historic standpoint, I would have probably taken the side of Ali. But I think that it was contrasting patriotism. A lot of times people thought that people still believe that those who were anti-war were anti-patriotic, and those my take on that was, well, they're just as patriotic because they also believe in America too, and they didn't believe their country should be in a war that that really had nothing to do with our own security interests, and in a war that was unwinnable. And the thing, but at the same time, though, you had Joe Frazier and Ali. That fight exposed some divisions within the black community that a lot of people mischaracterized Joe Frazier as some type of sellout or white man's champion. Even the people who wrote, black sports people like Brian Gumble, who wrote that at the time, realize now that it was how wrong it was. Joe Frazier grew up in a black, and probably in the heart of the black experience, coming up from South Carolina. And I think that even, and I'll say this, even as that divisiveness was going on in our communities, even in the white community, some of the hippie kids and anti-war people were calling, the blue-collar soldiers, the black and white and Latino soldiers, calling them baby killers. That was wrong, too. And I think that fight represented the misguided anger on both sides of all this, of that time.
Here's something. If you placed me, and you know me, obviously you know me very well, you placed me back in that time, knowing me well, knowing me the way you know me.
Right.
If you didn't know who I was rooting for, knowing you the way you know me, who do you think I'd be rooting for?
Well, I would say that you would probably be rooting for Frazier because you're a Philly guy, and not because of race.
Let's remove Philly from the equation, knowing the way you know me personally. Who do you think I'd be rooting for?
Ali. I would say I would say Ali.
And obviously supporting the Black Power movement, obviously supporting the anti-Vietnam movement, obviously supporting, we'll just say the political slants. My whole persona falls in love with Ali. And you're right. The one deciding factor was, for me, regionally, was Frazier. And then I got a chance to meet Joe a number of times. I was one of the last people to interview Joe when Joe was still aware of a lot of things. And I think I shared this with you. I apologize for repeating this on your air with you. I had a very solemn moment with Joe. And I'll never forget it. I'll never forget it. It was just me and Joe alone. And it was a very, very poignant moment. I can't say a very poignant moment in Joe's life because it was me and Joe Frazier's casket alone.
Wow.
25 minutes. It was me and Joe's casket alone, standing in the middle of the spectrum. And remember that public viewing. They had the public visitation of Joe's casket, and with the cowboy hat on, the white casket. I'll never forget Jackie's daughter, and Peter Lyde came down, and Jackie got very, very, well, obviously it's her father, and she got very emotional. And I remember her telling me, I'm not going to watch myself. I don't want to get too choked up. Watch my dad. You guys stay with my dad. And Peter went after her, and I was there doing it for Ring, and I just remember standing there, just me and Joe, me and the old man. And I put my hand on his casket, and just remember, just nod my head, just the great memories. A great man. And you'd like to think where they are, or you'd like to think there's someplace else, where they are, and they're still probably showing and yelling at one another. But they were two amazing men at the time, and they deserve to be remembered. They deserve 50 years later to be revered, because without one, you don't get the other. Without Ali, you don't get Joe, and without Joe, you certainly don't get Muhammad Ali. I mean, Joe was one of the major forces in placing Ali where historically he fell in the sport of boxing.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Ali's stature after that fight grew, and the thing about it, what the third fight. I think you mentioned the third fight. And before we go to break, I got to go to break. I got to tell the story, and I want you to stay on with me a little bit after the break. After the third fight, I think that fight whooped Ali in a sense that I think I think that third fight made him say, you know what? I mean, he said something. He stopped talking trash. I think he put the gorilla away. He did all that stuff. And he said, man, you know, that guy, he said Frazier, he took back everything. And I think at that moment, that was when I think, and maybe Ali knew it all along, maybe he did, but in that moment, and I think he wanted to and I think Ali felt bad about the way he disparaged Frazier. So I'm going to say before I go to break that as the two are meeting in boxing in the Valhalla section of heaven, the boxing of Valhalla, so to speak, that, you know, that they're friends and that they thank each other. They're thanking each other for making each other great while they were on the earth. And on that note, I'm going to go to break. But Joe, stick with us for 1 second. I still want to finish this conversation. You're listening to 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURD, the Chris Murray Report. Will be right back.
Attention WURD audience, do you know that you can get help with your PICO energy bill? PICO is here to help you with financial help through various assistance programs, including the PICO CAP program, which provides a monthly credit for eligible low-income customers based on the customer's total household gross income and energy usage. If you are experiencing financial hardship, you may qualify for the PICO CAP program.
And PICO Cares is the customer assistance and referral evaluation service designed to assist special needs, low-income customers who have a temporary personal or financial hardship that prevents the payment of your PICO energy bill. If you have a special needs child or adult in your care, your household may qualify for the CARES program.
Call 1-800-774-7040 today to see if you qualify due to an existing situation or a change in circumstances within your household. Call 1-800-774-7040 today for more information on the PICO CAP or PICO CARES program. PICO, powering our communities.
James Schuler Memorial Boxing Gym presents Around the Way Rumbling, an amateur boxing event Saturday, March 6th. The first bout is at 2 p.m. at James Schuler Memorial Gym, located at 750 North Brooklyn Street off of 42nd and Lancaster Avenue. Boxing saves lives, and this is the perfect time to join the gym. Monthly memberships and boxing lessons are available for ages 7 through 70. For sponsorship information, call Crystal at 717-421-0512.
Livelihood. WURD Radio's new initiative, connecting Black Philadelphians with jobs, entrepreneurship resources, small business development information, and financial literacy tools. Learn more at wordworks.com. That's WURDWORKS.com. And stay tuned to WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
WURD Radio celebrates Women's History Month with the 2021 Level Up Contest. Join us as we embark on a 3-city contest that will highlight Black women-owned businesses who are making a difference in their communities. You can nominate yourself or your favorite Black woman-owned business and enter to win a marketing campaign valued at $5,000. Level Up is a joint production of WURD Radio in Philadelphia, WVON in Chicago, and KJLH in Los Angeles. These 3 Black-owned stations are joining forces to host a historic, interactive, and multimedia contest spotlighting Black women-owned businesses in Philly, Chicago, and Los Angeles. The deadline for submissions is March 15th. Philadelphia finalists will be featured in a special 2-hour live on-air pitch party on March 31st, where the Philadelphia winner will be selected. Go to wordradio.com and click on the Level Up banner for more information or to nominate yourself or a Black woman-owned business you love. The 2021 Level Up contest is sponsored by Comcast, Bank of America, PICO, Keystone First, Thomas Jefferson University, and Jefferson Health.
You're listening to WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD, independent Black media.
Okay, we are back. One thing I sometimes forget to do is remember, ladies and gentlemen, you can catch us live streaming on WURD Radio's Facebook page, so you can see what I actually look like. If you don't know already, don't laugh, Joe. But from that standpoint, you can listen to it. And I want to do a shout out to anybody listening to our Facebook. I also shared our Facebook live with my friends on the Big Ten Black Alumni Network. As you all know, in addition to being a HBU grad, I'm also a graduate of Michigan State and Go Spartans, although we got spanked by Michigan the other day in basketball. But the thing is, I just want to shout at everybody who happens to be listening out there online, watch this on Facebook too, and contrary to popular belief, I don't have a face that frightens young children. Anyway, Joe, one last thing before I let you go. You talked about your memories of Joe Frazier and Ali and all that. 50 years. I mean, for the 50th anniversary, what's the lasting legacy of this fight? What's the lasting thing that we can say about how this fight? Because we still live in kind of a divisive society, albeit and it's somewhat the same. But how does this fight go down in history? It goes down as something that transcended the sport itself.
Hello?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay, I'm sorry. I lost your question. I think what should be remembered is actually how much in common, a number of the things that were in common with these two guys had to go through. Joe Frazier had a life of struggle early to get to where he arrived. Obviously, Ali had to encounter struggle with the hatred he had to deal with in terms of his political and religious stance. So these guys both had to deal with their share of hatred. I mean, Frazier came from South Carolina, and just talk about, I mean, they're still fighting. I mean, when he came up, in the 50s, they were still fighting Civil War, in some of the people's minds down there. So again, both had quite a bit in common. I like you said, Chris, my only wish was that both would have buried the hatchet, and they didn't. But they provided a lot for a lot of people. They did a lot of good. Both of them did a lot of good. But I will say this, and obviously my stand is with Joe Frazier. And I'm going to use this. I got the pleasure of doing a piece on Joe's family. And obviously, you know the hell that Joe's family went through. Especially the first fight came about. So this is from Tamara Frazier, Joe's granddaughter, the daughter of Marvis. She had a great quote. I got a chance to speak to Weta, Joe's daughter. I got a chance to speak to Marvis and Joe's two nephews. But it was Tammy, who, by the way, is working on a PhD. So a number of Joe's children and a number of Joe's grandchildren have gone on to get college degrees. I mean, Jackie's own daughter went to law school and is now a judge. So his sacrifices and his hell that he went through now paid dividends for his children, his grandchildren, and his great-grandchildren. That's the legacy of Joe Frazier. And what Tammy said was fantastic. She says to me, obviously we know the physical and intelligent gifts that Ali had. And as I said to you a little bit earlier, I mean, you had the Dempseys of the world, the Marcianas of the world, and Joe Frazier comes along and is in that same vein. There was only one Muhammad Ali, in and out of the ring. But here, we as a people, we as a group, black, white, purple, pink, orange, whatever your religion, whatever your faith, whatever your ethnicity, whatever anything, we have far more in common with Joe Frazier. Just common folk. We have far more common with Joe Frazier and to turn around and grasp that success Joe had in that first fight than we do with Ali. Because, again, we're a lot more, especially the way you're built, the way I'm built, we have a lot more in common with Joe than we do with Muhammad. And she's right. She's right. And so you look at this little man who had all these imposing physical attributes, but also had these imposing physical detriments, and he still did what he did. Monday, March 8th, 1971. He still beat the hell out of what wound up turning out to be, the greatest heavyweight champion of all time, and probably will be the greatest heavyweight champion of all time.
I would say that too, and I would say, although I probably, from the activist side, I probably have more in common with Ali. But you're right. I was a little guy, and thing is, being a little guy, having to play sports, and you're the smallest guy on that field, you got to work a little bit harder, and that's what we admire about Frazier. And there's between Philadelphia, Baltimore, D.C., New York City, all the East Coast. That's hard work city, in my opinion. These people, the people who live, the black kids, the white kids, the Latino kids, there's a work ethic. There's a work
and I got to emphasize this. Ali came from a pretty middle class background. Joe Frazier grew up in a shed. He grew up in a shack.
Yeah. I mean, that's but see, that's the thing.
We as a people, I don't care again who you are, what your background is, your race, ethnicity, anything. Again, there's far more of us that grow up dirt poor and with nothing. And he's a great example of that. Joe Frazier's a great example of that. There's a lot more. We have a lot more in common with the Joe Fraziers of the world than we do with the Muhammad Ali's of the world.
Yeah. Well, okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah. I would say you're right about that. Well, Joe, I gotta say, as always, it's good to have you here. I'm gonna let you go this time, and I gotta say, man, thanks for having this conversation. And thank you for all your contributions. Every time I have you on the show, it's always a good show. And so, and like I say again, and by the way, I am on a diet right now. I am on a bit of I'm not a diet, but I'm eating vegetables, and I lost 10 pounds. I lost 10 pounds.
Can I say this on the air, Chris?
Yes, go ahead.
Because I've said it to you privately. I wanted to thank you for 2 years ago, and I wanted to let your radio on this now. 2 years ago, you had my back when this whole city wanted to turn around and chop my head off for that Carson Wentz story. I mean, and I appreciate that. I mean, there's, your faith, your trust in me. When a lot of people we know in the media had a lot of scathing things to say about me. I made it up. I did this. I did that. It's greatly appreciated that you had my back. And we all now, myself, you, a number of others, we're the ones still standing. We're the ones that are laughing at, well. But a lot of people turned around and pointed the finger. I'm not saying I'm a representative of a lot of things or a lot of people, but this was one, not just for me personally, but this is one for the little guys. And what I mean by that is, again, the big times on the larger platforms. You know the way they think. You know the way they operate. You know the disdain that sometimes they look at guys like us who are busting our tails, working real hard, trying to get whatever scratching and clawing we can get our hands on. And
right.
And we can say that little thing there in January 2019 was a victory for a lot of us, literally and figuratively, a lot of us little guys. And this was something there that a lot of the big media tried to stomp on. We both know what happened in the end. We both know what the truth was in the end. And I just wanted to thank you again. I know I've done it privately, and I'll continue to do it privately, but I wanted to make sure people on the air know that Chris Murray's a hell of a man. He's filled with a hell of a lot of character, and believed in somebody. You really didn't have a right to believe in me, but your character and really shone through, and it surfaced. And again, I wanted to thank you for that.
Thank you. Well, no, Joe. I'm overwhelmed by that. Thank you for saying that too. But yeah, you're a good guy. Like I say again, from day one since I've been in part. Yeah. So definitely. All right.
Enjoy tomorrow. It's going to be a lot of fun tomorrow. 2:00.
All right. Thanks, man. Ladies and gentlemen, that was my good buddy Joe Sanlaquito, and you can catch him on Philly Voices, Ring Magazine. God knows the stuff about boxing. He's there, knows the fighters, and just like I said, I'm proud of that guy. And I always have him on the show. Now, but for the remainder of the show, I got y'all here. So, thing is, I want to hear from you guys today. I want to hear y'all. I want to hear your own take on the Ali Frazier anniversary, the fight, the fact that it went beyond, the ring. I want to hear, like I say, 215-634-8065, 1-866-361-0900. if you're on Facebook and you have me go on Facebook, and we're on the WURD page. We're live there too. You can also catch us on YouTube and everything. You can catch me and see all my collection of hats and all this other stuff. I could switch hats now, but the thing is, ladies and gentlemen, these are Ali Frazier, man, that was just, man. I agree. I slightly disagree. I mean, Ali, I have more in common with Ali because as black people, whether we're middle class or poor, we deal with the race. We deal with racism. So we have Abdul from West Philadelphia. Abdul, how are you?
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing okay. What's happening?
Yeah, I'm just like you. I got more in common intellectually and politically, and believing in black advancement and self-esteem and independence and all that stuff more aligned with Ali than Frazier. Now, me, I will always take Ali or any black man who care about being conscious of themselves from the essence of their being, as far as remembering from where we come from, the continent where we come from, and now people before slave ships and being enslaved here into the present day. To me, Joe Frazier and a lot of some blacks, remember their history from coming out of slavery to present day. That don't get it for me. My history start way before that, before our names is the last names we got, and our thought process been manipulated and, indoctrinated, and we've been emasculated. But as far as this guy, now listening to him, when you got no offense to him, just hearing his voice and, a little bit where he come from make me think he's white. And he's telling us how we should feel and how Joe Frazier got more in common with us. That's why when I see Max Kellerman and I'm talking about this coming on tomorrow already, and I seen the other white guy Max was talking to on Max on Boxing, and he come off just like this guy. I mean, telling black people how to think about black issues and problems towards us. Now, Joe Frazier, Ali, I'm quite sure, was redlined just like every other black person. His family was redlined and couldn't get bank loans, and he had to go to board school.
Absolutely.
And this guy trying to tell us how Joe Frazier is, because Ali come from Kentucky. They call Kentucky the South.
Right.
Like they call South Carolina. Just because Joe Frazier parents, I'm black. I might have a lesser job that pay me less than my neighbors. That don't mean we ain't going through the same thing. He might drive a Lexus, and I got a hoopty, and he own his house, and I'm renting mine. So to say because Joe Frazier come from sharecropping, his family still came up here as a teenager, and they still had to deal with the same things. But
okay.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was going to say, I don't think knowing Joe. I don't think he was trying to tell us how to think. He expressed an opinion.
He's expressing himself, but he said 2 times. He reiterated it that we have more in common with Joe Frazier.
And again, that's still his opinion.
Telling us would we have more in common. He kept saying that. And we the little man, I don't care how much unathletic I am, as he tried to describe most of us, saying we short and and all this, like Joe Frazier being undersized and Ali was the exception, fast and all this. We still all had to do the same thing. And like I said, I'm more psychologically and intellectually more incorporated with Ali because the man saying what I see. And he was saying something to the fact that, Joe Frazier, done all these things and didn't really say nothing about Ali. I seen mostly every interview leading up to that fight with him and Frazier. And one time they was in the studio talking, and Joe Frazier kept taunting Ali about him not going to the war or something, and they got in a scuffle inside the interview thing, and the guy, I don't know if it was Howard Cosell or one of the other guys was there too, and then they had people had to break them up because Ali had stood over top him because Joe Frazier kept, saying, man, you a chump, you ain't going to war. No, that's, to me, that what you call one a company man. Joe Frazier was more to me like a company man. I mean, I know you say he done good things and all that, and then the other guy said him and Ali didn't reconcile. I seen Ali and Joe Frazier. I believe that was the Sixers game when they were senior citizens sitting on courtside. They had reconciled. Now that's the reason why I won't show this show, because you got a white guy telling us untruths. And I know tomorrow when they do it, they're going to be having little pocket interviews telling us stuff that's not true, like they didn't reconcile. And like Joe Frazier was, the hero, and done all this stuff. He was just as much antagonizing as Ali. Only thing I never liked Ali done was playing with that gorilla.
Yeah. Well, can I? Okay. Well, okay. Well, let me. Yeah. Well, let me say a couple of things. Okay. I expressed my views to everybody about how, because I was more in common. I had more in common with Ali and Ali as someone dealing great and fighting in the consciousness that Ali had. But I also think that I didn't like, and our evolved self from that time, we all have grown, is that I don't think, that we should disparage each other on a personal level. You can say, hey, I'm better than you in the sport. And Ali said some things that were hurtful to Frazier. I saw that fight, the confrontation they had on Wild World of Sports in '73. And both sides, I think on the one level, and sometimes in our consciousness, when we are really, really conscious about things, and I got to go to break after I say this, but in our consciousness, sometimes we say things, we tend to not insult each other, but we say things without maybe context, if I'm explaining this properly. And, from that standpoint, I think when I don't think Joe was telling us what to think. Joe was expressing his opinion. Just like I expressed my opinion. And when I express my opinion, I'm not telling you what to think. This is my opinion. And Joe was expressing an opinion. You can disagree with that opinion. I slightly disagree with Joe when he said, and I slightly disagree with him when he said we all have more in common with Frazier. I have a lot more politically in common with both Ali and Frazier. We have commonality with both of them. They're both black men in a society that basically keeps us, as second-class citizens. Got to go to break. You're listening to 96.1 FM, 900 AM WURD. The Chris Murray Report will be right back.
Tune in Sunday, March 7th, 2021 from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. as WURD rebroadcasts the Pew Forum on Race and Debt with Amadi Braxton. That's Sunday, March 7th, 2021 from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. on WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM.
I'm Anthony McLaughlin. Been denied insurance? Call 215-782-8574. Life insurance, age 0 to 85, no examination needed. Homeowners insurance, any home, any condition, same-day coverage. 215-782-8574. Auto insurance, we can have you covered in 15 minutes. Business insurance, call 24 hours a day, 215-782-8574. I'm Anthony McLaughlin. When you need insurance, I can help.
Tune in every Saturday at 4 p.m. for the Did You Know Show with host Bryant Green, right here on WURD, 96.1 FM and 900 AM.
WURD recognizes Black women innovators and entrepreneurs who are making history every day. Nominate a Black woman-owned business for our Level Up contest. Go to wordradio.com for more information. Sponsored by AARP, PICO, Bank of America, New Voices for Reproductive Justice, Comcast, Thomas Jefferson University Hospital, Keystone First, and the Museum of American Revolution.
You're listening to WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD, independent Black media.
Okay, we are back. We are back. But just to reiterate a point that I was making earlier, my thing is that, a lot of times people, we all express our views, okay? Some people express opinions I disagree with slightly, even my friends. Even my Black friends and people. I have friends everywhere, and my thing is that my thing is that if when I hear an opinion from a white guy, anybody, I'm not looking at it as he's trying to impose his opinion. He has an opinion, then you counter that with, well, in my opinion, is this. We have BG from Germantown with us. BG, thanks for being patient. Hello, BG? Are you with me? Okay. His name? Are my earbuds? I guess. Oh, he's gone. Okay. I hope he calls back. Okay. But I mean, when I look at the legacy of that fight, I look at Ali and Frazier. Some of the things Ali said about Frazier, to me, is wrong. And I don't think what I don't like, and it goes back to what a caller said earlier, that, Black men disparaging each other. We can disagree. Like, for example, when Kaepernick and Malcolm Jenkins had their disagreement along with the guy, Reed, from the Carolina Panthers. They disagreed, and of course they got on Malcolm, and probably, and in some respects, I kind of agree with Kaepernick, but I understood Malcolm's position, sat on that as well. And my thing at the end of the day, but the one thing that Malcolm Jenkins, despite all the criticism that he endured from both from Kaepernick for what he did, and the other guy, Reed, his first name really escapes me right now because I'm an old man, but the thing is that Malcolm did not counter and go after those guys because they disagreed. Maybe they did it privately, but the thing is that I don't like it when we personally disparage. You can disagree. I always say on the show, people are going to disagree with me. I get it. I'm not the sage. And the thing is, what I try to do is to learn. And the thing that I don't like about social media sites like Facebook is that all the hatred comes out, or people take it really personally that someone dares to disagree with them. So I don't know. Pete from Philly. Pete, how are you?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm doing okay, man. I'm doing all right, man. I can't wait till it gets warm out. The days are getting longer, though.
All right. Yeah, so listen. So first of all, congratulations on losing that 10 pounds. That's the first thing.
Yeah, I got to stop eating them hamburgers.
Yeah, listen, as you were saying that, I was biting into a donut, so sorry about that.
That's okay. I can use a donut right now, but go on.
Your station is doing great, so thank you guys for doing what you're doing, WRD, professional, and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, it's good for the community, and which is great. So I need to just want to make a comment on, to Joe Santaguida. So, good job for, Joe. We know Joe Santaguida very well. And people in Philadelphia who may know me as well. My name is Pete. They call me Big Pete. Joe Frazier's son-in-law. I'm married to his oldest daughter, Jackie Frazier, who's also a boxing champion and, worked for the courts. So
wait, is this Pete? You're Pete Live? Is this Pete Live?
This is it, Pete Live. Yes.
Yeah, how you doing, man?
How you making out?
I ain't recognize. I ain't recognize you. How you doing? How's everything? You see me around various places around town. Yeah.
Yeah.
How you doing today, man?
Everything's well, man.
I was
Just hanging there trying to keep it together.
right.
Take it together, man. What you didn't know who you was confused?
I was just like, wait a minute, you know. I mean, like I say, shit told me, man, because I probably would have had you and Jackie on the show, but I didn't think about that because Joe had called. Joe and I talk all the time, and he told me, he says, you know, Monday's the anniversary of, and I said, wait a minute, and then he said March 8th, 1971. I said Ali Frazier. You know, I mean, that's almost, you know, that's a date that just sticks out in my mind. But I gotta ask you, from the family's perspective, how are you guys remembering this date?
Well, I'm sorry. What's the question? I'm sorry.
No, the question. I mean, how are you feeling about this anniversary? You know, 50th anniversary of the fight. I mean, of the great fight.
Well, first of all, we're proud. You know, super proud. You know, family members of this great man. Both of them. You know, and I'm listening to the audience. I'm hearing the response of different people, how they relate to them. And one is how they relate to one as a fighter or a boxer and an athlete. And the other one is how you relate to the person as your physical or your religious or your mental state of mind or everyday thinking. And both men, you know, came from different backgrounds. And, you know, one of the things I want to make sure that people knew that about Joe Frazier, that I know more about all of them, but Joe Frazier lived here, he spent his money here, and he died here. And a lot of people, you know, talk about what Joe Frazier didn't do or what he did do, but one of the things I want to be sure that people remember, he had a gym right there at 2917 North Broad Street for African-American young men or any other kind of men or women who can come to a safe place, haven, to train for fighters and teach them how to be young men and women and have respect and have dignity. And he gave them, you know, he gave that all at 2917 North Broad Street, which is Joe Frazier's gym, and he paid for it out of his pocket all those years. It was never a federal endowment. It was never sponsored by the city. There was none of that stuff, you know. So I mean, these are things that, as you know, I know. And so all these different, you know, things and people making comments and stories that other people tell and quote, you feel free to call me and I'll give it to you straight. No chaser. But but as far as the fight is concerned, I think the fight was one of the greatest fights ever in history. You know, it has been for the last 50 years. And we're blessed to be here to have this conversation, to talk about what a great fight it was. Both athletes was undefeated. You know, Muhammad Ali, you know, was a tall, good-looking, flashy, dancing boxer, puncher, and Joe Frazier was the shorter, stronger, strong young man. You know, came from the South. You know, as you said, built a heavy bag from a sack. You know, and came out rumbling. But we're, you know, just, you know, we're close to, you know, the Ali family as well. You know, we speak with them. We talk with them. We know the commemoration is just fantastic. You know, to see that 50 years later, all over the world is still being deemed the fight, you know, the fight of the century, and we're still talking about it. We've seen some fights in the past, but we're not talking about a fight like this one. That night, those two guys, I mean, they put on a show that was unbelievable. But I just have one question for you.
What is that?
What do you call the person? What do you call the man who beats the greatest? Smoking Joe Frazier.
I would say
Smoking Joe Frazier.
Yeah. There you go. Thank you, Pete. On that note, we got to end the show, man. But thank you so much. You know, like I say, give your number to my producer when we get off the air. I want to have you. We got to incorporate you guys into the show and talk about this. But I appreciate you calling in, ladies and gentlemen. We are done, and I hope you enjoyed our show today. We will see you next week on the Chris Murray Report on WURD 96.1 FM, 900 AM. WURD Black Talk Media. Support Black Radio. Support this station. Become a full word member. Take care. Bye bye.